Welcome to MMA Junkie Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, buckle up because we're going to talk about the chaos that took place in Tampa. Dana White takes a page out of Joe Namath's book and gives us a guarantee. Also, Israel Adesanya is booked to fight a non-title fight. Get that. First time since 2019. That is crazy. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con. And look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. Goes from MMA Junkie Radio. He's the SBC creator, and he's here in Las Vegas. Danny Segura is back. He covered the show for us down in Tampa, up in Tampa, because now he's down in Miami. And the MMA media titan returns. It's Mike Bond. He checks in from the Great White North. He's in Toronto. Vegas, Miami, Toronto. We're spread around the world. Cold coffee's on the ones and twos. Let's get going. Joaquin Buckley defeated Colby Covington via TKO doctor stoppage. Buckley had officially banked the first 2 rounds. I looked it up. He did. And with seconds left on the clock in the third round, the octagon side doctor said, yes, doable. No mas. Danny, you were there. Lead things off. Reaction to the fight.
This is exactly what I expected, and I was actually surprised. A lot of people were picking Colby Covington to win as the underdog. A lot of people liked sort of the lines, and I saw a lot of the chatter among other reporters all throughout fight week. But have people not been paying attention to what Joaquin Buckley has been doing at 170 pounds? I mean, that guy is a threat physically, and the skills are catching up. The fight IQ is catching up as well. I think the world of Joaquin Buckley, and people that have been following me for some time have probably heard of this. These comments before, like, I think this guy's gonna fight for a title. I think this guy's a problem for anybody in the division, and yeah, I expected a dominant win from Buckley, and that's exactly what he gave us. I know Colby is already saying a few things about the stoppage, this and that, but the stoppage aside, as far as the doctor going in there and stopping the fight from the cut, the guy was just putting it on Colby Covington, and at least I don't know how it came off through the cameras, but being there live, it just looked like Colby had nothing for him, nothing. So super impressed with Joaquin Buckley, and I mean, this guy, watch out. I think he's going to end up fighting for a title. I have no doubt about that.
Mike, Dana White said that Colby Covington probably wasn't too pissed that it was stopped, but that more than likely in Las Vegas, it wouldn't have been stopped. How did you read the fight and the finish?
Yeah, maybe that would have been the case. I mean, it's hard not to look at Irene Aldana, what happened a couple months ago in Las Vegas, and think that this was a kind of inconsequential cut compared to that one, but it was still bad. The placement was terrible. I do think it was probably the right call to stop it. You could tell it was, what Dana White said, it was really bothering Colby. Like, he would go to the corner, they would make it stop bleeding with the Vaseline or whatever, and then he would do that right there and pretty much rip it right back open himself. Great photo there from Cold Coffee on the timing. So yeah, I think it was a rightful stoppage. Yeah, maybe it goes longer in a different state, but this was only getting worse for Colby. He had that big target there, and I don't think Joaquin Buckley was planning on stopping inflicting damage anytime soon. He said he was annoyed by the finish as well. I think he would have rather had like the clean highlight reel or whatever he was planning there, but is what it is. Still a quality win for him, and definitely a lot of questions about where Colby Covington goes on the back of this.
Goes, it may have been stopped early, but the doctor did go through her paces, kind of gave a warning, said this is what's going to happen, and it was ugly. Before they clean him up, it was ugly. What'd you think of the fight, and what's your reaction to the stoppage?
I mean, it was getting pretty nasty there at one point. I mean, just tons of blood. I mean, I don't care where you're at. He didn't have very much time on that cut. But Buckley, his performance, holy crap, man. That was the performance of a lifetime. And when I know we all look at Colby Covington and we say, look, this is kind of a shell of who he used to be. But that being said, like, it doesn't take away from how tremendous Buckley looked. He was a menace on the feet. When the fight hit the ground, he had answers there. He made adjustments throughout the whole fight. I think it's a statement win for the guy, and to message to everybody else in the top of the division. And is it just me, or did Bilal Muhammad choose the worst time in history to be the champion of the welterweight division? I mean, there is killer after killer waiting for him, but Buckley really made a statement with that win. It was tremendous.
What's next for Buckley, Mike? This is your wheelhouse. I know I've already peeked at what you've said, but let the audience hear what you think should be next for Joaquin Buckley.
Yeah, I did like the Kamaru Usman call out, but maybe that seems like it's not going to materialize. Seems like there's a lot of chatter hinting that maybe Usman's going to fight Madalena, maybe on that Sydney card in February. So if that ends up being the case, that obviously takes him out. There's a comment, I think, from Joseph Boza here where I think he says, stay ready if you're Buckley, because Shavkat Rakhmonov, I know we all think he's deserving of the title shot, but he mentioned that knee injury. We don't know if there's going to be surgery required or what the timeline for that looks like. I don't think Bilal Muhammad is going to want to sit around and wait for him whenever he is ready to go. Now that he's cleared, I think he will fight whoever the UFC offers him. So Buckley at least put himself in that wheelhouse of maybe situational title shot could come his way. But if not, there is guys out there. You could do like a Sean Brady. You could go back to the Ian Gary fight if you wanted to, that was originally supposed to headline this card. So there's options, but he needs one of those guys that are either the huge name or, a former champion like Usman.
And I know the UFC is also going to London in the spring, and so obviously they'll want to feature Leon Edwards if he's ready to rock and roll. Danny, you were there. He laid an egg at the post-fight press conference because he just made a statement and bailed. But he was actually
I wasn't complaining, George. I was not complaining.
That's true.
It was 2:30 a.m.
He actually did pretty good with that whole the dating game type thing. He said, right? Hey, audience, what do you say to Bachelor number 1, Bachelor number 2? And at first I wasn't sure where it was headed, but they got behind it, and it looked like they either were feeling Bilal Muhammad or Usman. But what'd you gather from all that, and what would you do next with them?
First of all, I absolutely loved it. I think that Joaquin Buckley is very outspoken, and I think he's getting better on the mic. I think the first step to be a sort of a draw on that end is to be outspoken. And I know he's had some misses, right, with the Conor McGregor call out and stuff, but if you just kind of steer him in the right direction, I think this guy could be not only a player at 170 pounds skills wise, but I think he can become one of the more popular fighters there and be one of the more interesting draws. Pair that with some of his dominant performances, and I think you got a good star in at 170 pounds. But as far as like the options themselves, I like the Kamaru Usman one. I know that Mike mentioned a couple of things how it might not work out timeline wise, but I think that's the move in a vacuum. I think he's a former champion, big name, step up from Colby. I think right now fighting Ian Gary would kind of seem like going sideways, especially Gary coming off a loss. I like the Usman one. I think that's the fight to make if they don't put him against Jack Della. If not, just wait around. Look, he had a super busy year.
It's true.
In 2024, he fought 4 times. I don't think it'd be the worst idea to give his body a break and just hang around, be sort of a backup opponent for that Bilal and Shavkat fight, weigh in as a replacement, and then get next. I think at this point he's done enough to deserve that. So I say either wait for the title shot and be a replacement fighter, or Kamaru Usman. That's what I'd like to see for him.
Danny, I'll stay with you. Does he have championship material? Whoever it is that's holding the belt by the time he fights, can he win the title? Has he shown you enough of that he
100%. 100%. He's a problem. Will I favor him against the Shavkat? Will I favor him against the Bilal? Probably not. But is it far-fetched to think that he can't beat any of those guys? Dude, the dude has nasty power. He owns probably the best knockout we've ever seen in UFC history. He's absolutely massive for the weight class, very explosive. He can strike. I mean, he was hitting Colby with some double jabs, and his boxing looked pretty smooth. And then on top of that, you add the wrestling and then just the physicality he imposes both behind his striking and his grappling. I think this guy is a huge problem at 170 pounds. And again, I am confident to say that he will fight for a UFC belt. He will get there. Will he win it? We'll see who's there at that point and how people are looking. But yeah, 100%. I don't discard the idea of Joaquin Buckley being UFC champion.
You agree, Goes? Can he be champ?
I agree. I think he will definitely get there. Whether or not he can win the belt, I mean, it all kind of comes down to matchups, right? Certain matchups are a little better, a little bit more in his favor, but they're all tough. If you kind of go off of what he did to Covington, and then you can kind of even look at Ian Gary, who he was supposed to fight, right? His performance, I think we all kind of feel like he probably would have got Gary as well. So, I mean, the guy's just taking big steps.
Ooh.
But if you look at that top, man, Bilal Muhammad's on point right now. Shavkat's a very tough out. I think it'll be tough, but I think he could pull it off. If I'm him, you know how every card, no matter where they could go to Siberia. You look in the crowd, Diego Lopez is there. He should be that guy in everybody's face from here on out, because I think he could be a superstar, man.
Mike, I'm not I'm not sold. The guys are sold. How about you? Do you think he's got what it takes? Only because at the same time, who he's beaten in 2024 is impressive, because 4 wins is just impressive. But at the same time, we're saying, Colby ain't what he was, and you know what I'm saying? So I don't know that we've gotten that true test from the modern welterweight gladiator. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I mean, you look at the past couple wins, it's Wonder Boy, it's now Covington. If he fights Usman, like, you're going to maybe start building a narrative around him. He's just picking off like the older fighters in the division at this point. They're maybe beyond their best days, but no, he's definitely really good. I mean, the thing I think you need to highlight when it comes to Joaquin Buckley is this guy's still only 30 years old, right? It feels like he's been in the UFC for a lot longer than that. If you told me he was 34, I probably would have believed you, but no, this guy's right in the thick of his prime. He's got still room for improvement, a lot of elements he can grow on. So yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely capable of landing in a title fight. Can he win it? Sure. I think all these guys in the top 5 at welterweight right now are pretty capable of beating each other. So yeah, I could definitely see it happening, but it's going to be tough, man. It's got to be the right performance on the right night. And that's what it takes in this weight class. All these guys can do it to each other, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I hope I don't come off as a jerk. I kind of saw the same thing with Covington himself. It was like, well, you caught Lawler on the tail end. Oh, well, Maya's about to retire. Well, Woodley in the shoulder. You know what I mean? It was like, I guess we can never be satisfied as media and fans. It kind of just goes in some sort of a circle. But I'm just talking about the level of talent right now with Della Madalena, Bilal Muhammad. What he did in Manchester was special. Shafkat undefeated. Ian Gary even impressed me. Off a loss. It's going to be tough to get there, but he was impressive on Saturday night. We definitely got to give the man his due. What's next for Covington, Danny? What do you do with this cat, man? I know he's all about SoFla, the life, the Trumps, but hey, does he still got more left in the tank in MMA?
I hate to sound like very harsh, but he just looks so washed. Like, who can he beat right now in the top 15 of the UFC welterweight division? Like, let's just skip all the way to number 5, like the top 15, and pick out some names there. Like, can he beat a Michael Morales? Can he beat a Carlos Praxis? Maybe a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, but I don't know. A lot of those names, I favor them against him. And it just doesn't seem like he's a guy that would want to take a backseat and not be in main events and not be talked about in the big fights. I'm not sure if he's going to be willing to take on these young up and comers. So what, does he just kind of go into like the Legends division and maybe fight like a Burns or like a Wonderboy Thompson? I don't know. It looks very, very murky, sort of his future. It all depends what he wants to do, because we know Colby, again, likes to be the protagonist, likes to be the main guy, but the skills aren't there anymore to be that guy. So he's going to have to take a backseat if he wants to continue fighting, and I don't know if he will. So, yeah, it's complicated. I would say I'd like to see him against Gilbert Burns, just because, like, I feel like that fight was teased and talked about for many years. 2 vets. I feel like both have been kind of going up against at least Covington now with Buckley, and Burns has fought Hamzat and a few other young guys. I would like to see kind of a veterans matchup there. I think that'd be a good one.
He does have a belt. He does seem to have a future, maybe. Like, I don't know, I don't know if he would start a podcast. He's got friends in the right places, I guess is what I'm getting at. Should he fight again, or maybe is it just time to retire?
I mean, it all depends on like what he holds valuable to himself, right? Like, if he wants to win a title, that's just not going to happen. But if he wants to keep collecting paychecks, he could probably do it and not have to be one of these guys that we're completely worried about. But I don't know that he'd be that entertaining. I don't know if the UFC wants to give him that much money to have those types of fights. He's told us before, he's talked about it before. WWE is a route that he'd want to do, but I feel like every fight that looks kind of like this fight, or even the last one, kind of doesn't really help that very much. I don't think fans would get too excited about seeing him over there. So when you look at this division, man, it's only going to get younger, quicker, faster, stronger. These guys are just tough, man. I don't know. But making money, that's an addiction to fighters, right? And I don't think he'll walk away from the sport, but I don't think he'll be here too long.
Mike, close out. What do you think, man, with Covington? He's been a big figure in our sport. Played the heel well. Does he got more to give?
Yeah, I think he does. If you look at his demeanor, I guess, in that video blog, like there's nothing that shows me there that he's wanting to walk away after this. He said he was just getting started. He is just getting started in his career. I know it's just like a lot of talk and things like that, but you can take away, I guess, some of the rawness in a moment like that for a fighter. And whether they're excuses for the world or excuses for himself, talking about he pretty much just came off the couch and didn't train because he was on the campaign trail for Donald Trump and all this different stuff. Clearly, he feels this wasn't the best version of himself. In the Leon Edwards fight, he talked about coming in with that medical issue from like the altitude training and then the broken foot. So I know it seems like almost making excuses for Colby here, but like in his mind, it's pretty obvious to me. He feels like however many of his most recent performances have been pretty much unideal circumstances or hasn't been able to show the best of him. So I'd expect him back, hopefully on a full training camp, things like that. And then if he goes out there and he is what Danny seems to think he is at this point, somewhat washed and the skills just aren't there, I think that would be a much bigger answer. Again, not trying to take away from Buckley's win here, but I think you can read into that if you're trying to be an optimist for Colby's future. So I could see him coming back. It depends which way you want to go. Do you want to give him another next generation guy, or do you maybe want to try to bleed this thing out a little bit longer and give him someone who's in his range, a Michael Chiesa, a Gilbert Burns, a Vicente Luque, like someone like that who's a more established name, who I think he could beat those guys at this point. The guys like Carlos Prates and Michael Morales and stuff like that, though, that's a very tough out. And I think if you see that type of matchup, I think it tells you what the UFC thinks of Colby's future. If he gets a guy like Wonderboy, I think it shows that they probably will think there's a few more fights out of it.
Good stuff, guys. All right. The rest of the Tampa show was fun. Let's go over it. We'll start off with Goes. Which KO impressed you the most? Because there was some good ones on Saturday.
That's tough. I mean, there were some great ones, but the scenario around Cub Swanson's fight, the way the fight was going, the ups and the downs, and the way it finished, I thought that one made me feel good, and I thought that one was a pretty amazing shot considering the way he set it up.
Yeah, definitely. It looked like he might be on his way out, and we might be talking about a whole other person retiring, but he nutted up, man. How about you, Mike? What was your favorite KO of the night?
I mean, it's hard to beat Swanson. That was a ridiculous knockout, but Dustin Jacoby was pretty sick too. I mean, literally the crowd is chanting boring and booing. And then like seconds later, you get this vicious knockout. Can't really ask for a sweeter moment than that. The guy needed it badly. It was 1-4 in his past 5 fights coming into this one. So Dustin Jacoby is a guy who already had a UFC tenure in like 2012, left, did the whole career rebuild, went to kickboxing, came into Contender Series, did some good things, but this was a tough slump for him. So he needed that rebound win and gets another bonus. So good for him.
I'm sorry. All right. Danny, how about you? What was your favorite KO of the night?
It's got to be the Swanson one, just because, like, man, the aesthetics of it were great. And also it's Cub Swanson. That guy is just amazing. But just for the sake of mentioning another one, I got to highlight as well, Michael Johnson. I mean, he's a veteran. He's been around forever, and it just seems like he's had a lot of bad luck in his career. And he's also fought some very tough guys that have also been clearly better than him. But it just feels good to see a veteran still this far into his career picking up like not only wins, but like highlight reel wins. Like that was a nasty, nasty KO, and that dude's trouble. I want to see him in a big fight now.
38 years old, and he still pulled that off. He looked pretty slick. He took mine. I was going to say him, but those some good ones. I ain't going to go down the road of Woodson. I thought Padilla, after 3 minutes, was just, I don't know what happened to that guy. Someone like took everything out, and it was one of those adrenaline dumps. I think they could have tapped Danny on the shoulder and said, just finish him off. And Danny could have laid one on him. No, seriously. Like, did you not notice when Woodson was barely pushing him? He was like moving around. I go, oh God, this isn't going to end good. And it didn't. I like Manel Kopp. It took a while. He played with fire, but he got himself a nice finish. And Bruno Silva did not go away silently. I mean, he was winding up, and barely missing Kopp. It was a fun fight for the flyweight division, but there was some good ones on that particular night. And so Dana White, speaking to Kopp, said he's not going to get the title shot next, but he will be happy with the meeting we're going to have. So that sounds like maybe another contract, or maybe he's already got a fight night or some sort of a booking in mind, right? But is that fair or not? for Manel Kopp to just get glossed over so quickly when flyweights, we are kind of looking for the next Pantoja opponent.
We are, but I think it kind of has to make sense, especially if you look at the rankings, it is a pretty significant jump. Their first fight, though, with Pantoja and him, it just feels like enough has happened in between. They've changed enough as fighters that it does feel like it would be a little bit fresh, and you like Manel Kopp's style. He comes forward. It seems like it would be a fun fight. Pantoja's just kind of almost been his own worst enemy, the way he's been knocking people off. But I just don't feel like they're going to pass some people up to make that happen. I feel like if he gets one more win, for sure, it'll probably be his. And anytime Dana White says he wants to talk to you about that, he usually makes it worth your while. So I think Kopp will be pretty happy, but I don't think they'll give it to him.
Mike, what do you think? If not Kopp, then what? But did you think that was fair for him to just brush it off so quickly and say, nope, he's not next?
No, I think it was fair to do that. I mean, for better or worse, like this was a good win. Bruno Silva was on a nice run here, but like we just had that Kopp Makaev fight, which did not deliver on the pre-fight build in any way, shape, or form. And then he obviously lost that fight. So I just think a little more work to do. He's kind of a perennial contender. He's lost the one that's really going to get him over the hump. I think this sets him back up for an opportunity like that. But there is better guys. If you're going to run a rematch at this point, like it's got to be, I think, the Brandon Royval fight. Like he's got the best resume. I know we saw him and Pantoja fight not that long ago, but like that's what you got to do at this point, unless they have something outside of the box they want to do here. Maybe Kai Kara France is something you could do, since their first fight was technically an exhibition on tough. But yeah, I think Manel Kopp is kind of on the outside looking in. He needs one more.
Mm-hmm. Daniel Marcos. Where are we with this guy? He's 17-0.
Hey, hold on. I want to go back a little bit. I couldn't disagree anymore with these guys. I think you got to put Kopp in a title shot right now. I think that's the move, 100%. I know sporting wise, Royval has looked great, but literally a year ago, December 16th, a year ago today, December 16th, we saw Alexandre Pantoja beat again Brandon Royval. And like, honestly, at this point, we need to add excitement to the flyweight division. And I think the most exciting title fight you can make right now is Pantoja versus Kopp. Kopp not only looked great, he was styling on Bruno Silva, got a finish. Remember, he made championship weight as well on Friday with 125 pounds. It seems he's got everything dialed in. I feel like he's got to get the next shot. And I don't know, make Royval versus Brandon Moreno, the trilogy. I don't know. You got to do something, but we need a bit of a fresh matchup. I know it'd be a rematch with Kopp, but it's, as Go said, it's been a long time since. I think you got to put Kopp in a title shot. Finally, he's kind of got things together. I know the fight before he lost to Mukaev, but prior to that, he had like 4 or 5 wins string together. Plus that fight itself, the judging was controversial, and there was some I guess fouls going on as well. I think you got to put Kopp in there. And look, Ursa got a title shot off. I don't know what ranking he was, but was back there. And we just saw Sakura get a title shot. Wasn't even ranked. First fight in the UFC. It's got to be Kopp.
It's definitely possible. I don't think it's an outrageously more exciting fight than him versus Royval, though. Like, if you're giving me the option between the two, Kopp has had some stinkers in the UFC, and he's been a nightmare for them to deal with behind the scenes in a lot of different ways too. So I just don't think he hasn't done any favors. I mean, he goes on ESPN. He's like, I know we're on ESPN, and drops 5 F-bombs in a row. It's like, you're just not doing the little things, I think, to sway the UFC.
I thought that was a great call out, and I thought kind of like that. Adesanya got a stray there to it, and his reaction to it was funny. But I don't know. I think it's got to be Kopp.
Don't you feel like the fact that they did the Kai Asakura fight, I think, is the reason why they feel like they probably need to go back to order, right? That was just kind of out of left field. I think that's what kind of hurts them a little bit. I think we all want to see that fight. If we all had our choice to see a fight, it would be that. But I don't know that it's the one that makes sense. Like, I don't know what you would tell a Brandon Royval.
In Danny's defense, though, he's 2-0 against Royval and Marino.
Mm-hmm. It's not hashtag Danny tripping. We're not throwing that out there. We want that.
Don't get the chat started, Ghost, please.
I always crack up when someone catches a stray. Who caught a stray, Danny?
Adesanya.
What did he say? What did Kopp say?
He was like F this flyweight, and then just randomly dropped Adesanya in there. He's like, oh, F Adesanya too.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about when Dakota Ditcheva said, my brother has yet to get laid like in a decade because he's training me. He caught a huge stray over at PFL.
Yeah.
Something like that. Oh, man. I'm glad
Putting his drought on blast.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's See, the Usyk thing, it was a big win. Sorry, Kai Kara France, big win over Usyk, but he had also lost 2 in a row. Yeah, the UFC, I don't know what they're going to pull out of their ass at flyweight, honestly,
Yeah.
but if it's not caught, we'll see. We'll have to see who it is. Daniel's going to come to you for Daniel Marcos, 17-0 now.
Mhm.
That is not easy to do.
Nope.
And yes, he hasn't hit the top 10 or the top 5, but Yanez is a respected bantamweight. Your thoughts on this guy,
100%.
the Peruvian?
Man, he's so solid. He's got a bit of everything, and I know that fight was pretty close, and I know some people scored it for Giannis, and I saw a lot of people hating on Marcos because of it. But look, anybody that you put, I think, in the top 15 against Giannis, they're gonna have a tough time, right? I know Rob Font finished them, and so did Martinez, but I feel like Giannis is a very, very skilled fighter, and he, depending on the matchup, he could be a nightmare for anybody that's ranked right now. So I like Marcos. I think he's on his way up. I don't know if he's going to get the Jose Aldo fight. I think that's a tough one, but give him a Kyler Phillips. I don't know. Give him somebody certainly in that top 15. I think he deserves it. And I think this is probably the most successful Peruvian fighter today, not talking about historically wise, but who's killing it right now the most out of that country, who's got a lot of a country that's got a lot of good fighters. I think Daniel Marcos, and I think that's a guy that is going to be in the rankings, and he's going to be fighting the best fighters for some time.
Yeah,
Especially
he showed elite game there in the double foul. He can poke you in the eye and kick you.
Yeah, that's definitely hard to pull off. Yeah, both a eye poke and
not
a
easy to do. That is.
Was that first ever, by the way?
Maybe.
Could be. Think about the timing for that.
Yeah,
No point deduction, though, and if he got one, he would have lost. So.
That's like trying to stand at the plate and hit a curveball while doing your taxes. You know, I mean, to do both at the same time.
Yeah,
is incredible. Because if Cub Swanson says, "Hey, it's been 36 hours," I'm leaning on some people that I know in the sport. You know, some fighters, some promoters, whatever. You're my MMA media guy. What do you think I should do, dog?
It's so difficult because you have to look at it as like as a fan watching a fighter. This is the perfect moment for them to walk away.
Right.
But if you look at it as a business, if you look at it as Cub Swanson, like hasn't Cub Swanson maybe earned the right to say, okay, this is what I want. This is what I'd like to fight. This is where. Obviously, it's not going to be in Palm Springs. I already shot that down. But maybe somewhere in SoCal, somewhere in Las Vegas, and just kind of go through those progressions of it being your last fight. Because when it comes to Cub Swanson, a lot of people forget, like this dude had a lot of time in the WEC. Even before then, he had a lot of fights. Like he's been doing this a very long time. And I think he should have that feeling of knowing it's his last fight and really taking it all in, having everybody he wants to be there. It doesn't mean we have to throw him to the wolves, but if we just give him a decent opponent, he picks the location, he picks the time, I think he deserves that. I think he could go out with one more. But if he were to walk away off of this one, I don't think anybody would have a problem. This guy was on our 3rd ever show, MMA Junkie Radio. You know how long ago that was, George? He was in studio for our 3rd show. That's how long.
I know. I think it's a perfect ending. Goes 50 grand. He got the win. It was a show. He beat the guy on the road. They're not going to go to Palm Desert, and they got a proper arena there. He loves coaching. He's kind of a part-time manager. He co-owns a gym with Bisping, and he does those Ocean Spray commercials on the longboard. I mean, I don't know. I think he's perfect. Mike Bond, what would you suggest?
I think this is the time to walk away. I'm just going to read you guys this quote from his media day before the fight. He said, "I'd say my main motivation to fight at this point is I have Bloodline, the management company that I have, and a whole crew of guys that I mentor and try to show them what to do and what not to do, help them with their training, their mental game. And it's one thing for a coach to say, do this or do that. It's another thing to show them." And my thought on this after the fight and what I put in my takeaways column is, man, if you're trying to show the next generation of fighters how to operate, walk away right now and show them how to go out on a high, to go out when the timing is right, a special moment. I think that's the best example he could possibly set for his group of fighters on how to get out of the game at the right time. So he's definitely capable. There's guys he can beat if he wants to stick around, sure. But that's kind of my thought, given that quote from him at Media Day, given how it all went down, show the next generation how it's done.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great take. All right. Danny, Joel Alvarez, is he tripping or what? 155. He's done so well. Is it hard to make weight, or why would he blow this chance that now when he's on the verge of fighting the top dogs, he's entertaining 170?
I want to see him at 170. He's huge, George. He's massive for the weight class. And one of the reasons, and one of my biggest like sort of issues with him is that he hasn't really been too active. And a lot of that one, he has some visa issues, but also he tells me he needs is not he prefers. He needs 10-week camps in order to make 155. Like if UFC were to give him a 6-week camp, he can't take it. He cannot make the weight class. And like we know that like activity is king in the UFC and being available. I think 170 is the weight class. I very much kind of like compare his career kind of to like Michael Chiesa's in the sense that like his body has been just begging him to move out of 155. And I remember talking to Michael Chiesa like after he moved to 170, and he's like, man, I just wish I would have done this years ago. But because I was ranked, I always felt like I had a lot to lose by moving to another weight class and kind of starting all over. So he's right now 31, I believe. Like I do not want to see him start over at 33, 34. I think the time is now. If really the body is asking him to do it. He even tells me like he goes home and he doesn't even have energy when he's in camp to play with his daughter. He just has to kind of linger around the house just because he's very low energy. So I want to see him at 170. Sure, he can make 55, but it's not healthy. And I do think his true potential is going to be at 170. And just imagine him and Praxis. Just imagine him and a Wonder Boy Thompson. I mean, I feel like there's so many good matchups for him. Yeah. I'm all about Joel Alvarez, 170 pounds.
All right. If you put it like that, that's all I needed to hear. Chiesa was a great example. I can think of Jorge Masvidal. I used to say the same thing. If you want me to make 55, you got to give me the notice. Otherwise, I can take late fights all the time at 170. And he was pretty successful at 170 at his run. Michael Johnson called out Justin Gaethje. He actually, I think, welcomed Justin Gaethje from what was then WSOF to the UFC. It was a hell of a fight. Might have even been a fight of the year.
It was.
And you want to see them run this back, or is Gaethje that guy that might fight Poirier because Poirier's mixing something up for his last fight? What do you know about that world?
Yeah, Michael Johnson versus Justin Gaethje 2 is not happening. I can say that with a fair bit of confidence next. I think Justin Gaethje is going to have something in Q1. Maybe it's the Poirier fight. Maybe it's someone like Dan Hooker, but he will be fighting someone in the top 5 at lightweight, not unranked Michael Johnson, who's 15-15 in the UFC. All due respect to the Menace. I know he is a friend of the program, all that stuff, but yeah, shoot your shot, man. I'm sure it would be another banger, but makes absolutely zero sense. So not happening. I'm seeing someone in the chat suggest Michael Johnson versus Tony Ferguson. I don't want to see that either. No. That's a little bit too much for Tony at this point, even though on paper, given their time in the UFC, makes sense. I know Michael Johnson was the first person, I believe, to beat Tony Ferguson back in the day with that broken arm. So I see where you're coming from there, but no. Michael Johnson will be fighting
Barbosa, knocked out Poirier, beat Ferguson, but yeah, he has dropped his fair share of fights as well. But all respect to the Menace for sure. He almost got a title shot on our show live one time. Someone had fallen out. I can't remember the story. Maybe Goes will remind us afterwards. But we got to move on, guys. So listen, I made a reference at the start of the show. It was a 1969 reference. It probably was good for 21 years, and then at the end of the decade, 31 years, I guess that would be. I should not explain. I should not have brought it up, but I'll explain. Joe Namath guaranteed that the Jets would win the 1969 Super Bowl, and it was like, how dare you? It was like a big thing back then. But now there's been so many guarantees. Who knows? But that's why my first question of the panel is going to be: were you surprised by White's comments? However, we have a clip of that. We're going to share with you guys just so we get a little bit more reference here, some more footing. Let's do that first, and then we'll go to the panel.
I think it's probably the biggest fight in heavyweight history, and it's a massive fight in the history of the company too. It's a big fight.
Yeah, we know Tom Aspinall's down. Jones is kind of like on the fence, or at least that's what he said publicly. But
right.
Have you talked?
It's weird.
How confident?
What's weird about that? Let me tell you what's weird about that. So usually, those guys say that shit behind the scenes and not publicly. John says that shit publicly, but not behind the scenes. John is a very unique individual to deal with. From day one, I've been confident that John Jones would do that fight, right? I mean, even before the fight. I said if he won, there's no way John doesn't do this fight. John Jones isn't afraid to fight anybody, and that's a fact. And the only time that anything remotely weird has ever happened with John Jones was the time that his fucking camp did the weird Chael Sonnen thing. We can't fight Chael Sonnen on short notice. Other than that, and that wasn't him. It was his team, and he listened to his team for whatever reason. But that's like the goofiest fucking move in the history of the UFC. But other than that, John Jones behind the scene is not a guy that turns down fights.
Would you guarantee 100% we see that fight?
Yeah. I'll say 100%.
Check out Danny Segura. He put him up against the wall, put him on the spot, and that was good. That was good stuff. And now I'm hearing he's following up on that, doing other media, and he's being asked that. Guarantees was a big deal in sports a long time ago. Coaches, managers, they'd say, how dare you? It's bulletin board material. We're going to lose now. You're going to jinx it, whatever. But that's why for me, it was kind of a big deal. And I don't know if you guys feel that same way goes. Were you surprised by Dana White's comments to kind of commit to that?
I was. We don't really get to see him do that too often. And if something isn't on paper written, I actually thought it was a little bit of a mistake. You just never know with managers these days, with camps. Now you kind of put yourself in that position where you have to make it happen. You think back at what the fans had to endure with no John Jones, no Ngannou. Are they really going to disappoint everyone again? It just seems like it's a big bargaining chip to not have anything on paper. So it did kind of surprise me a little bit, but good on Danny for pushing him.
Yeah. Mike, what do you think, man? He's got one whole year to play with this thing, but John Jones may have just nicked another million or two, maybe in these negotiations, right? Because now the other guy's got to come through.
Yeah, I hope so. Like I've said many times, he deserves every dollar he could possibly get of that FU money he wants. So hopefully they give it to him. I don't think Dana would come out and say this if maybe there wasn't something like tentative already in place, or he feels confident enough from talking to both sides that maybe it's just a matter of, crossing the T's and dotting the I's type of thing. But yeah, I was a little surprised that he had come out to say this, and credit to you, Danny, for like framing the question the way it was, because I think usually like some people wouldn't even think to be like, hey, is an unconfirmed fight 100% to Dana White, because we've seen 10 million times him just shoot that question aside and it managed to work out, and he gave a firm, definitive answer like that. Definitely out of character for him, but I think speaks volumes to, I guess, his confidence in building this fight, which he has had since the moment he came to the press conference after New York. But agree with Goes there. If this thing is not a done deal yet, definitely creates an interesting dynamic with the negotiations. And if you say this now and then the fight doesn't happen and John retires, or you do Alex Pereira or something else, definitely a big mistake. And once again, like a failure in the UFC's history of getting some of the biggest heavyweight fights we could have ever had done, all the way from Brock Lesnar and Fedor to Jones and Ngannou, and then this. So better happen.
My guys are making money for some of these fighters, and those fighters better recognize this guy just penciled in a guarantee. This guy got $300K for the fighters at UFC 300. So was it 303 or 300? It was 300, right?
300, yep.
So yeah, some respect on Junkie's name for all you haters out there. Listen, Tom Aspinall did an interview with Piers Morgan. I don't know why. He doesn't play for Manchester United, so I don't know why he's trying to ruffle feathers. But he said on Piers Morgan that afterwards, Dana White told him, so Aspinall told Piers Morgan that Dana White told him this would be the biggest fight ever. Now, if you watch that clip, we don't need to watch it again, but Dana commits to it being probably the biggest heavyweight fight ever. And then I think he wants to say it'll be the biggest fight ever, but he's always been pretty respectful to the Irishman, to Conor McGregor. What do you think, Danny? Do you think this would be the biggest heavyweight fight ever and possibly the biggest ever? Because to be fair, the sport has gotten bigger, so records are meant to be broken.
Yeah, I do think this is the biggest heavyweight fight in UFC history. I'm pretty confident in saying that. I mean, Tom Aspinall is easily the most legitimate interim champion in the company's history. Like, already got a defense. And I mean, he's so legit that people are saying he's actually the best, considering that Jones and Ngannou are out there still having success. So by far, this is a huge fight. And it'll be a very, very big fight for the company. The sport is huge at this point in time. John Jones is obviously a star, and Aspinall is becoming a big name over in Europe. But how can you beat like some of the numbers that McGregor and Habib have done? again, maybe I'm being a little bit negative, and maybe this fight breaks all those records. But biggest fight in UFC heavyweight history, yes. Biggest fight in company history, no.
You agree, guys?
It's right there. Yeah, I think once, especially once it's announced and the wheels start to churn and you get those guys in front of cameras and they're talking, yeah, I think it will be. We were at Lesnar Velasquez. That was pretty huge. It had a little bit of nationalistic pride in it. The arena was bumping, but I think this would probably take it.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm at a loss for words. I think the heat they're starting to develop is definitely going to help. I think it's the biggest heavyweight fight ever in UFC history, but I don't know if it can beat Khabib and Conor. Last word to you, Mike, on this topic. What are your thoughts? Heavyweight and all time. Do you think it's got some possibilities there on both?
No, you guys nailed it. Heavyweight, strong case. There's been some big fights, involving Brock Lesnar and Stipe and Cormier. The trilogy was a big deal. There's been some significant ones, but yeah, with the right build, I think this is absolutely right up there. But come on, touching Conor versus Khabib, that was a different level of just attention, heat, everything for the sport. So yeah, I don't think anything's touching that, but it'll certainly be a massive fight for them.
What didn't help is Aspinall just saying, I'm not worried about the money. I'm worried about get both, mate. Get both.
We'll see if his tone changes if the fight's actually signed.
Exactly. And this thing needs to be at Allegiant Stadium or Wembley Stadium. It has to be a stadium show. Dana White's all into breaking records. Break that record. There you go. There's a challenge for you. Guys, Global Fight League made an announcement. Now, this has been talked about for a while, right? This is the new player in town. They dropped on us last week. If you just base it on star power, we should be tickled to death. Only this isn't 2010, unfortunately. And we've already kind of done Legends fights in the past. So it's our job to cover this, and we will. But let's get a reaction from the panel. Back to the MMA media titan. Mike, what were your thoughts on GFL and the bomb they dropped on us this week?
I don't know. I'm still kind of digesting it. I wonder how much of this is actually going to come to fruition, right? And we've seen the team format with the IFL before. This all just feels like kind of a replay of, something that's happened 10 plus years ago in the sport. So we'll see what they can do. Man, I don't know, some of the names on here, I get it. If you put them all in a bunch, it looks somewhat appealing, but man, guys like Husamar Palhares is 48 years old. You got a bunch of fighters much closer to 50 than they are even 40 at this point. And it's it almost feels like that early stage of Bellator where they were trotting Tito Ortiz and things like that out there, but almost even worse because these guys are older than any one of them were. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how this plays out, how the draft goes, who they really get involved, who actually fights and gets medically cleared, all this stuff. But meh.
Is there room for a third promotion? What were your thoughts on the team-based format, Danny?
I want to see more promotions. I have hated the way PFL has ran things with Bellator this year. So if you get another player in there that's willing to drop big bucks and fill in some slots and give fighters other opportunities, I'm all for it. All the best of luck to GFL. By the way, just quick comment there. Somebody in the chat said, and I want to give proper credit here because this was hilarious. Brian John, Grandpa Fight League. That's pretty cool, right? But no, I mean, all the best. I do like the roster. People that have been following me for some time know that I am all for the Legends divisions, and I do think there's a spot for that. And I do think there's a lot of fighters out there that can sort of maintain a good level even at a late stage. What I do hate is the team format. What are we doing? Use these stars to build other stars so that are younger that you can then promote. Yeah, I absolutely hate the team format. Again, we'll see how it I have so many sports that I keep up with, points, all that. Just give me the whole matchmaking. It's a lot easier. This guy wins, this other guy doesn't. It's that simple. So yeah, we'll see how it all unfolds. But the names do look promising. There's some names I like on there.
They signed 45, at least that we've heard of. Who was their best signing? Who are you most excited about that might work out in terms of helping build the league, but also they still have some gas left in the tank?
Well, I'm curious to see where Gegard Mousasi is now. I'd like to see him fight again. Things weren't working out for him. He bailed over there at PFL, but I'd like to see him compete. But I just don't understand what we're going to get out of this, right? The team format, like Danny said, doesn't make sense. We saw that with the IFL. The only way I ever see anything team related work out is if they were to do like gyms as teams versus, regions or whatever. I'm not too interested in that.
I hear you, man. They almost went at it in that sauna over there at what was it?
The ATT Black Zillions.
ATT and the Black Zillions, yeah. I think it was Michael Johnson and Tyrone Spong holding it down. That's what they said. I don't know. Mike, who were you most excited about for this GFL? The announcement that was made of these 45 fighters.
I don't know if I was necessarily excited for anyone per se, but I guess someone that maybe caught me off guard that I'm curious to see what they do with was Alexander Gustafsson, just because I feel like he's retired multiple times. It sounds like he specifically asked for a UFC release so he could sign with these guys. So kind of curious just to see where his head and everything is at physically, mentally. And again, depends on the matchmaking, right? Like there is some fights you could do here that would have some appeal, similar age range, things like that. But I'm curious, like this isn't the full roster. I would imagine there is going to be a mix of maybe some less heralded talent. And are those guys just going to feast off the older fighters? Are they even going to go with the matchmaking wise? So we'll see how this whole thing shakes out. What's our draft coverage going to be, boys? Are we doing like a mock draft? Is there going to be a combine? What are we doing here for the inaugural GFL draft?
They did a combine for Power Slap. I'm sure they'll come up with something. How about you, Danny? What are your thoughts?
I think the one I like here is Junior Dos Santos. I do feel like that losing streak that got him out of the UFC was extremely deceiving, and then I saw him live against Jordan de Castro, which he suffered a shoulder injury, but before that he was looking great. Then he fights Fabricio Verdun bare knuckle. I thought he looked great as well. Plus he said, and this, I'm not breaking any news here, he said he's on very good supplements now that he's out of the UFC and out of that system that involves a lot of drug testing and whatnot. His words, not mine. And I think he looks great. I think Junior Dos Santos is one of those legend names that you can actually get quality MMA out of. And if I'm not mistaken, in his last fight, he won the was it the BKFC or the game bred bare knuckle title? I think you can get a lot out of him. So curious to see how he looks.
That's one way I think GFL could maybe excite us, is bare knuckle MMA or something. That is kind of exciting, to tell you the truth. The whole supplement game, wow, that's a whole other conversation. And I guess I'm most excited about Kevin Lee, only because he's a local guy, and I think he's got youth at least to try and get. You're
saying local guy for me or you?
Well, he was at the time, in Vegas. So we got to know him pretty good. He actually would insist on co-hosting a 2-hour show. But he's not 45, 48, he's like early 30s, I think. So we'll see what he might have left. I know he also wanted to get back in the UFC, so he must have got that door shut to him for now, but he signed with these guys. Listen, before we get to the final topic, let me get some shout outs real quick. Masters of the Universe, Chris Goes Wild, MMA Events Vlog, Joseph Boza, Steve Williams, Sky Vizan, L Daddy, always tuning in. R.1, I've seen your name before. 5K. Now listen, if you can share this with a friend, hit the like. That would totally help the show grow. We would greatly appreciate it. We don't think we're asking much. We get the panel together for an hour once a week to discuss all these big stories and unpack them. So when you see them out online, even after the live show, you can share them. That help. And again, the like button, that really triggers a lot. So hit that for us. And I'm going to do a couple quick questions to the panel that I grabbed from these comments. So some of them will go back, and then we'll close out with the final topic. Danny, this one was for you from Boza. What did Danny think of Colby's entrance live? Bisping called it the coolest entrance he's ever seen. In a way, man, they did this. I don't know if it was a drone or another camera, and to see the walkout with the flag, I kind of also agree with it. What were your thoughts being there in person?
I don't know about the coolest entrance I've ever seen, but look, I'm all for the pageantry. Like, I'm huge fan of Pride, big fan of how Bellator was doing some of the things like before the whole PFL thing. I'm all for it. If he wants to walk out with Hulk Hogan and kind of make it special, like, I think it's cool. He ripped the shirt there. I think that was a bit of a foul by Colby by cutting it. You gotta do it, raw. But all in all, like, yeah, I don't mind it. I like these kind of stuff. I think it adds flavor to the event.
He's a Tampa guy. He's a WWE legend, and he's part of his MAGA friends. So I
Yeah.
thought he kind of nailed it, honestly. This one is for Mike. Chris Goes Wild says, would they not offer a shot to JDM over Buckley if Shotcut has to sit out? I don't think so, but what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's a momentum thing. JDM just being out for, I think, a little too long, injuries, things like that. It's a lot to throw him into a 5-round title fight after that. So I think Buckley's kind of just the hotter name coming off the more high-profile win.
So he would be next if Shotcut is on the fence for a while, right?
Probably. I mean, who knows what they could go to? Like, there is options. If you wanted to do a Leon Edwards rematch, it could be there. If you wanted to put Usman into a title shot to give Bilal a chance at that like legacy name, I think all of these were things that you could justify and do. But in terms of like who's the most deserving on the best momentum, yeah, it would be Buckley behind Shavkat.
I like Leon, man, but he got ran through, so I'm hoping they don't rematch. Okay, and this one's goes from Nick Mitchell. Came through Facebook, by the way. You can watch live on Facebook, just so you know. What's 3 dream matchups for 2025, excluding Jones versus Aspinall? If you don't have 3 off the top of your head, just give me 1.
I wouldn't mind seeing Hamzat and Drakus go at it. I think that would be a fun fight.
That'd be fun.
That is a good one, yeah. I do want to see Poirier and Gaethje part 3, whether you BMF them or not. I just think it's good for them for where they're at. It's actually a good question. You got one, Danny, or you ready to move on?
Ooh.
A dream matchup for 2025. You got one, Mike? While Danny thinks of one.
Sean O'Malley and Piotr Jan 2 for 5 rounds.
That's a good one.
Oh, that's a good. Okay, how about this one? Valentina versus Pena. Run it back. Valentina goes for the champ thing. Oh, she's got her hands full. She's got to fight Manol, but if she gets past her, they chirp. Yeah, all right, whatever. You guys didn't get too excited about mine, Danny.
No, nothing's coming to mind. I'm still a little tired from Tampa, so
all right. We move on. The last one. Last week we had some 1-2 punches that were thrown our way for UFC's 311 and 312. We know our main events and co-main events. That was good. Getting ready for the spring of 2025. This week we had some more matchups thrown our way. Shara Magomedov versus Michael Page at middleweight in Saudi Arabia. It's a co-main event. Israel Adesanya versus Nasruddin Imavov in middleweights, right? 5 rounds. That's the main event out in Saudi Arabia. What are your guys' thoughts on these matchups? Goes Izzy versus Nasruddin Imavov. You know, this is the first time since 2019 that Izzy won't be in a title fight.
that's crazy.
Yeah. You know, when we go to Texas de Brazil and they give you those bananas, it's supposed to be like a palate cleanser, right? To change things up. That's what this fight is for Israel Adesanya. It's just a palate cleanser. It's going to change things up for him. I think it's something that he needs. And for Imavov, I think it's kind of a bold statement if you can go through a former champion like that. So I think it makes sense. I'm down with it.
All right, Mike, what did you think of that announcement?
Yeah, it was kind of known, this fight and both these matchups were kind of floating out there for a few weeks now, so I don't think it was a huge surprise once made official. But yeah, I mean, Israel Adesanya getting that Saudi Arabia shine here. They obviously wanted kind of a former champion type person in the main event there, and a little surprise this is the fight and direction they went with, but I think it shows where Adesanya's head is at. He's not like looking to get easy fights or, you know, money fights on the way out the door or something like that. He's got clearly an ambition to make himself a top contender again. So yeah, good for him. This is a high risk fight. He doesn't gain much from putting Nasruddin Imavov on his resume, but would give him some current relevance and stock in the division.
Mike, your thoughts on MVP moving up to middleweight? He's been mostly a welterweight in his career.
Yeah, this is fun. I think, you know, Danny had said on the show at some point, maybe after Char's last win, like keep him away from the top 15, do like fun fights. And could you ask for anything more than this? A guy who wasn't even in the division, like no relevance at middleweight for MVP whatsoever, but the style matchup on paper looks like an absolute blast. So if this fight plays out how we could all picture it doing, like at its best in our head, that's a great fight. It'll do a lot for both guys. But in terms of like being a relevant middleweight fight, I don't think it has huge stakes, but definitely curious for MVP moving up and what the motivation behind that was other than just the matchup.
Danny, if you're a fan that's going to this fight, I don't think you can complain, man. This has
any of those
fireworks.
in Saudi Arabia? Do they actually go to the fights out there?
What's that?
Said, is there any fans that go to these fights in Saudi Arabia out there?
I don't know. I never been there. You've been there. Is it mostly
Because I'm a
business
Saudi
people or
and
what?
have
What
millions of dollars. I think that's what you meant to say, George.
Yes.
oh,
Anyways, go
okay.
ahead, Kenny.
Danny, what are your thoughts on these fights?
I love him. I think shouts out to Adesanya, man. Something that I hate about the sport, and I get it. I hate it as a fan, but I totally get it from a fighter's perspective. But you see a lot of these guys that are former champions lose their belt, and then they just kind of sit out and try to use timing in their favor and get favorable matchups just to sneak in another title fight and this and that. And nobody really gives opportunity to the young contenders coming up because they just have so much to lose, right? But in this case, Adesanya is doing that. Adesanya is giving Imavov an opportunity and taking a very tough fight, a top contender. Like, shouts out to him because that is admirable. And you know that guy's got leverage to kind of, wiggle his way around and maybe get one easy win and sneak his way back into a title shot. But yet he's taking the hard road, the difficult road. So shouts out to him. And in terms of MVP versus Shar Bullet, I love it. I think these are the type of fights that both guys need. And yeah, I'm excited. Good fights.
Danny,
Also,
let
I
me
do
go
wish
back
I was
to
decided with
you.
millions of dollars, but
Let me go back
maybe
to
another
you
life.
with Jan Blachowicz and Carlos Ulberg. This one's got fireworks written all over it as well, man. What are your thoughts here? And is this a title eliminator of any sorts?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is a super tough fight for Ulberg. Like, I think if he wins this one, you got to throw him against Poatan. For Blachowicz, if he wins it, I think the conversation gets a little bit murkier. I think it depends on whether Ankalaev finally gets a shot or not. But if, we're talking about a world where
How would Ankalaev
imagine a title rematch between Ankalaev and Blachowicz. Is that what we're looking at for 2025? I mean, it's not too far-fetched. Jesus, I just thought about that. But definitely for Ulberg, if he wins, him fighting Poatan would be absolutely huge. Plus, there's that history with Izzy as well. I think that fight would be amazing. It'd be really exciting.
Magomed's next, right? Ankalaev. We got to believe that.
Allegedly.
And then if Prochaska wins, I don't think he's next because he's already had two shots at Poatan.
Mm-hmm.
But if Jamal wins, he's got to be next because they've been chirping. Looks like they might have
Even if
something
Ulberg
going.
beats Blachowicz, you think he skips him?
I don't know. What do you think, Mike? I don't want to ask Ghost because Hill's in Vegas half the time. He'll hunt us down. What do you think,
Yeah,
Mike?
I actually said this like before and after the last fight. You could put Ulberg in a title fight right now and make it a very sellable fight storyline wise, right? You have the teammate of Israel Adesanya. Izzy would be in the corner, at worst cage side, and you just have that whole element of Alex Pereira against someone in Izzy's orb. So if he wins this, man, like you gotta do that because you don't want to keep running Carlos Ulberg up against these killers and maybe he loses one of these and you lose that sellable title fight. So yeah, I think that's the way to go. Unless Magomed Ankalaev does fight Pereira and wins, and they probably do an immediate rematch with Pereira.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple minutes here before we exit. Goes came up with a crazy last minute idea. I like it.
It was from the chat.
Oh, it's from the chat. Okay. Name a fighter on your naughty list and one on your nice list for the year that was 2024. Who wants to go first?
Ooh.
Goes to go first since he pulled it.
Let's define naughty, though. I know somebody that's been very naughty in the sport, but
I think
Adrian Zan and Carolina Kovacevic, I think, would go on the naughty list.
No, I was thinking about like criminal actions, but never mind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely. I think that we all know that one. I'd probably say Merab Developshvili's been a little naughty, right? Getting into a lot of altercations. Right. Somebody needs to chill him out. Nice. Maybe Cub Swanson, right? He's been kind of a good role model, kind of doing things the right way.
That was good, Mike.
Yeah. Merab is a good one for naughty. I mean, I know we're all talking about referencing to Connor, but it almost feels like downplaying what he's being just label it as naughty. So I'll stay away from that. And nice. I'm not really sure on that one. Anyone else have a naughty? And maybe I'll circle back.
Danny, how about you, man?
Naughty. Could we throw John Jones in there just because, like, I feel like he's pissed off like so much of the fan base, and like he's definitely kind of been a heel this entire year with him ducking Aspinall and this and that. And then nice. I think I'm gonna go with
You think about it, I got two good ones for nice. I like Volk
I'm gonna
And
go with
Demetrius
Pantoja, man. I
hope
feel like
that
that
out
guy.
some time
That guy's gold.
to rest his brain, and he's done the right steps to keep himself relevant, but still staying respectful, letting his accolades speak for themselves. And Mighty Mouse sticking to his retirement, and both of them blowing up their YouTube channels. Shout out to both guys. I think they're both nice guys, have done it the right way. Back to Danny. Yeah, you got some?
Yeah, naughty. I'm gonna go with Jones, and then nice. I'm gonna go with Pantoja.
Hey, nice one. Mike Bond?
Yeah,
Close
for a
up?
couple nices, I'll throw out Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway, two of the nicer guys in the sport.
I saw Poetan the other day at the award show. Really cool with fans. He seems to be pretty grounded as well. He almost would have been on the naughty list, but that bitch lied. Anyway, all right, guys, we got to get on out of here, man. This has been a great show. I wish I could tell you we're going to be here next week. We're going to have a meeting later on about that. So for now, kind of count on it, because I'll give you my word. And if I can pull it off, if we don't do an SBC, we'll do a Q&A. Maybe one of the guys will join me. But listen, we appreciate you guys following us, following this show. Please share it. Please hit like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel. It's free content and it's good stuff, right? And keep it locked on MMA Junkie. Even through this break of the UFC, there's other stuff going on, and we got you covered. And I'll be on Overreaction tomorrow at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific with Simon Samano. In the meantime, go out there and be a champion. Take care.